Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. My name is Will, and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home.
Hello, Peter.
I worked on it. It was crazy. Yeah. So, where do we start? Came from Hotel Transylvania 4 onto this project, my first VFX project that I've done in the industry, and what a way to start. Came over with a couple of artists from Hotel, and very small teams, 30 odd people compared to 100 plus people, so it was different. It took a while to get used to, but it was really nice having a small intimate team like that. I had my lead, James Ward, fantastic. Rich Smith was the animation director, even better. And to top it off, Chris Wagner as the VFX soup. He is so much talent and so much experience in that guy, and just listening to him in dailies was just a beautiful experience to hear everything he had to say. So the sequence that we all worked on was the Empire State Building fight sequence. Quite a long chunk of film, quite a lot of shots, and very VFX heavy. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, spoilers, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are in Spider-Man No Way Home, in case you didn't know. And that's pretty awesome. And to count that, they also had the extra villains. So you had Lizard, you had Sandman, you had Electro, you had Green Goblin. So that's a lot of that's a lot of people, that's a lot of characters. And then on top of that, you have Doctor Strange, and then it's just there's so much going on. It was a huge sequence, and just awesome to watch. So my shots in particular, let's go through them and have a quick chat and kind of talk about them. So the first shot I worked on didn't really stay in the movie. It got kind of chopped and changed and moved around, and other artists jumped on it, and the camera changed and different things progressed, and I don't think any of my anim really stayed in there. But it was a fun experience. I wasn't expecting if it was like mocap, or if it's like what happens when you start on these movies. Like, is it all just motion capture artists and we're cleaning up? Well, no. We had this sort of porridge man, like an Xbox Connect porridge man, for reference. And we kind of went from that and worked on that one. And that was a nice little shot to jump into it. Because the whole process is different, You're doing like a higher resolution sort of pass for the directors. You're adding lights in, you're adding textures in, and you're doing a bit more work than you'd normally do in a CG feature. So you're trying to get this sort of pretty presentation pass for the client. So learning that early on was really important, and just adjusting my workflow, so that kind of came into it. And obviously coming from a sort of pose-to-pose film to live action definitely was kind of a sidestep in terms of learning how to adjust my workflow and change things and go a bit more straight ahead. And my lead and James Ward and my animation director Rich Smith was super helpful, and kind of guided me through and made sure I knew the things that I needed to change, and the things that I needed to develop, and sort of set me on the right path so I could succeed on this film. And then I got an awesome shot of Toby inside the statue, sort of just like webbing up. And I think this is always going to have a special place in my heart, because this was the first shot I saw lit. And especially coming from Hotel, it's toony. And I saw my shot lit, and it looked like Spider-Man, like real life Spider-Man inside the Statue of Liberty webbing away. And I was like, oh, excuse me? What's this? I'd never fully grasped how talented the artists working in VFX are to make something look so real. It's crazy. It's crazy. But a fun shot. We shot lots of reference, and this was the shot where I really learned how to adjust my sort of workflow to go from pose to pose to straight ahead, and just the things I needed to change, because what I thought was correct, when I showed it in rounds, it wasn't correct at all. And the notes that I got and the changes I made to the shot were approved, but when I looked at it, I was like, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem like it's weighted right, but it is, because it's so realistic. and I had to adjust my thinking to not think of things that look visually cool to me, but I needed to ground everything in realism, and weight needed to shift correctly, and things needed to move a lot differently than I'd trained myself to learn. So it was definitely a learning experience to change those things, and this shot was a really good opportunity for that. So then we moved on to one of my bigger shots of the movie. You've got Tom Holland and Green Goblin kind of bouncing down the shield after they've had this fight on his glider, and it's this climactic moment, and they had to roll very far. To say the least, they roll very far. And now, how do you get reference of someone rolling? We started with motorbike accidents and crashes in like the MotoGP. We went around in circles basically trying to find reference, and I ended up just going to my gym, putting crash pads down, and jumping into it over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. Some of the producers sent me a message to say, like, are you okay? Did you hurt your body? Because you did that a lot. But it worked. It worked. The reference worked. He needed to fall in such a way that looked real from a very high up camera, and that was the only option. Shooting reference like that. And that was one of the moments where I realized the full power of reference. So that was a really fun shot. Again, lots of like weighted body mechanics and moving things like I hadn't necessarily anticipated them moving, and finding the need to have a second witness camera and animate from that second witness camera, and making sure everything looked perfect from every angle, because that's how you make sure that it feels and looks right and real. So awesome shot, heaps of fun, and learned a lot of lessons along the way. So the next one I got was this the shot of Sandman. He's starting to bring all this power and this sand and all this equipment. He's just bringing it all in until he's becoming this ultimate powerful being. And it's fairly simple. I didn't really, as an animator, I didn't do a huge amount of work on it. It was making sure things looked right and looked cool. But to me, what I take from this shot was watching it go through rounds. The effects artist, and massive apologies, his name escapes me, watching the passes come through of the sand and the particles, because obviously when you have smaller teams, you're in rounds with all the other departments. It's not just animation, it's comp, lighting, effects, everything. And watching the effects passes of how the sand was created and everything that goes into it was absolutely mind-blowing. The amount of simulation and layers and render time and just talent and knowledge that goes into that sort of shot, crazy. And it's just a guy made of sand. You don't really think the amount of work that goes into it. So it was awesome. It was really awesome to do that. So probably one of my favorite shots by far on the movie was this one of Tom climbing up the side of the scaffolding. I'm coming! You've got Electro in the background firing off lightning bolts. You've got Sandman creating this big hurricane, and the wind's gusting, and everything's happening, and he's just climbing up the scaffolding. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of work. We sort of started out with this thing of him bouncing between, and he had a lot of movement between the sort of vertical columns. And we ended up kind of simplifying it and just having him climb up. But the big sort of technical challenge for me on this shot was the spacing between the bars. So if you think of this shot without any of the bars, if you think of him just climbing up a wall, like a Spiderman does, he just climbs up the wall. It doesn't matter where he puts his hands, and he's got the rhythm, and he's got the timing, and he's just dun 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 dun, and it looks cool, right? So then add in the fact that there's only bars every so often. His hands aren't always going to be the same space as the bars, and his feet as well. So when he goes to grab like this, well, it's not a wall, so there's not always going to be a bar. So if the bar isn't there, what if the bar is down here? Well, then it's off. The timing's off. And then if he moves up, well, then he's going to be letting go at the wrong time, and it's going to kind of look unnatural. So it's you have to sort of reverse engineer where he grabs, and that is what probably took me the most for this shot, was figuring out where to grab. And you really had to go, in hindsight, I could have done so many things to approach this differently and made it a lot simpler. But sort of going back and figuring out where he needed to grab and what looked right, and the balance of what he should be doing versus what looks good doing on camera versus what looks real. So there was a lot that was going into it, and was definitely just super, super challenging. But I loved it. It was a fun shot to work on. So another fun one I got to work on was this shot of Tom and Goblin fighting, and he's on the glider. And he's kind of smashing down and breaking up the panel because he wants to grab one of his little bombs and blow up the glider. So that was sort of an interesting one because it's a mix of plate and live action. So everything's CG there except for Tom. And so we had to figure out how to layer it in, and obviously comp does that, but I need to figure out how to time it and how to make it look good. And we had some redos of which bombs are they? Where are the bombs? Are they going to roll back? Do they just sit there? What do the dents look like? How strong is he? How hard is he going to hit that? And what's going to happen when he dents it? So I was the person that would go in and kind of model the geo to make it look like it was dented. And then obviously the talented people after me made it look amazing. But really fun shot. Another different type of thing, and another learning lesson that I had. So it was an awesome time. One interesting shot I did actually have on top of that Sandman one was when Sandman is going back to his sort of human form. And Kelly Port talked a bit about this on Corridor Digital.
But I also noticed that Lizard and Sandman here are basically in their CG versions the whole time, but we only see small little clips of them as their real people. Did they film anything for this?
They did not.
So they basically pulled from the archives, because Sony had those shots still, and used a plate and kind of up-resed it for a new video. And then I went in and cleaned up the mocap data on that and matched it so that the sand fell off his face. And then obviously the other departments made it look way, way better. But that was a really cool shot to work on. To know I was touching plate that had been shot many, many years ago. And just a really cool insight into filmmaking. So that was a really fun one to work on. The last thing I did want to touch on, and I'll just check my notes, was rotomation. So it's basically, you're getting mocap data, you're animating over a plate video, and you're copying and transferring animation. So a good example of this is I had a few shots towards the end of the film, end of our sequence rather, with, you've got Ned, MJ, and Tom. And there's lots of shots where they're hugging and interacting, and there's a shot where they kiss. Obviously, because we used a digital suit over the top of the suit that Tom was wearing on the day, we had to roto all of that in. And a lot of it came down to just pixel pushing and going in frame by frame and making sure it all lined up, making sure those necklines lined up. And then once we had that, you'd have simulation effects going in and cleaning it up, and the CFX team, fantastic job on it. And it was all hands on deck to try and get that sort of those shots looking amazing, and full credit, they do look amazing. Watching it on the big screen, it's very hard to tell that it's a digital double suit, but I had a bunch of fun doing that. So yeah, that's it. Awesome time, and I'm gonna keep saying this every movie I work on, but it was awesome. It was hard. There's a lot of work. This is a tricky industry because there's always a crunch at the end, and full credit to the people that were there till the very end. Full credit to Brad Griffin, the man, the myth, the legend, that did that ending shot where he's sliding along the rooftop and swinging. That thing was huge, and the extra departments sort of doing the R&D for all the crowds in that shot, and everything happening, and the lighting, comp and effects artists that were in there till the last day, and it takes an army to make just a small chunk of one of these films. It gave me such an insight into the behemoth that is a Marvel movie, and how many hands will touch a shot, and how many hands will touch a film, and it was a special thing to be a part of, and a once in a lifetime movie and a once in a lifetime project. So I'm very thankful to the team. As I said, James Ward, fantastic lead. Richard Smith was amazing as the anim director, and Chris Wagner as a VFX supervisor. But all the production staff and, the PSTs and the other animators, there's countless people. I went in there from Hotel with Brittany Owens and Eric Wang, who had come off Hotel, and that was really fun to be a part of with them. And, Eric designed the awesome crew merch. And there's just so much talent, and I don't think I'll ever stop saying that, but it's such a cool industry to be a part of, and I'm just thankful that I got to be a part of what I see is a moment in history for filmmaking, to be honest, which I think was Oscar worthy, to be honest. In my opinion, that's pretty cool to be doing all of that, but Dune, I guess. But yeah, I'll end it on that. It was an awesome time, and I think it's going to be one that I will never forget, that's for sure. So thank you very much for listening and watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's way too hot, and I'm going to go turn the air conditioning on. So goodbye.